A war that has shaken the Middle East and rattled global energy markets may be inching toward a diplomatic turning point, or it may not. Tonight, conflicting signals from Washington and Tehran are leaving the world in a state of tense uncertainty. President Donald Trump says Iran is agreeing to his terms. Iran says it is simply reviewing a proposal and is not negotiating at all. So, what is really happening between these two nations? And is a deal truly within reach? We break it all down right now. Good evening and welcome. I'm Rose Vance, and this is your complete update on one of the most significant geopolitical crises of our time, the ongoing United States-Iran war. It has now been approximately 1 month since the United States launched what it officially designated Operation Epic Fury, a large-scale military campaign targeting Iran's military infrastructure, nuclear facilities, naval forces, and missile production capabilities. Since February 28, 2026, the two nations have been locked in open armed conflict, the consequences of which are being felt across the world, from oil markets in London to shipping lanes in the Persian Gulf to diplomatic corridors from Islamabad to the United Nations. Tonight, we bring you the most up-to-date reporting on where the war stands, what a potential peace deal looks like, and what both sides are saying, and what they are not saying. On Sunday, March 29th, United States President Donald Trump held an impromptu press conference aboard Air Force One as he traveled toward Washington. His comments were candid, at times optimistic, and notably laced with a degree of uncertainty that underscored just how fragile the current diplomatic moment remains. When reporters asked the president about Iran's response to a 15-point peace plan that the United States had transmitted to Tehran through Pakistan, Trump was characteristically direct. "They gave us most of the points," the president said, before rhetorically asking journalists, "Why wouldn't they?" Trump went on to affirm that Iran is, in his view, agreeing with the United States on the contents of the proposal. He added that, beyond the original 15 points, Washington would now be seeking agreement on what he described as a couple of other things. The president also offered a window into the nature of current diplomatic engagement, stating, "We are negotiating with them directly and indirectly. We have emissaries, but we are also dealing directly." He described the state of these negotiations as going extremely well, saying the United States is in a strong position at the table. However, and this is a crucial caveat, Trump immediately qualified his optimism, adding a remark that captured the complexity and unpredictability of dealing with the Iranian government. "You never know with Iran, because we negotiate with them, and then we always have to blow them up." When pressed by reporters on whether a formal deal could be reached as early as this week, Trump said he is pretty sure a deal will be made, and described it as potentially coming soon, while simultaneously noting that it is also possible they won't. That kind of carefully hedged language from an American president reflects not just diplomatic uncertainty, but also the high domestic and geopolitical stakes involved in any agreement that could end a war with one of Washington's longest-standing adversaries. So what exactly is the United States asking Iran to agree to? Let's look closely at the 15-point framework that Washington transmitted to Tehran through Pakistani intermediaries, a document whose contents have now been confirmed through multiple senior officials and international reporting. According to sources briefed on the proposal, the plan includes the following key demands. 1. An immediate 30-day ceasefire to halt active hostilities on both sides. 2. The complete dismantling of Iran's nuclear facilities at Natanz, Isfahan, and Fordo, 3 sites that have been central to Iran's nuclear enrichment program for decades. 3. A permanent, legally binding commitment from Iran to never develop nuclear weapons. 4. The immediate handover of Iran's existing stockpile of enriched uranium to the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA. 5. A full ban on all domestic uranium enrichment within Iranian territory going forward. 6. granting the IAEA unrestricted monitoring access to all remaining Iranian nuclear infrastructure. 7. Strict limits on the range and quantity of Iran's ballistic missiles. 8. The complete cessation of Iranian financial and military support for regional proxy forces, groups operating in Lebanon, Yemen, Iraq, Syria, and Gaza. 9. An immediate end to Iranian strikes on regional energy facilities, which have caused significant disruption to Gulf energy production and exports. 10. The full reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, the critical waterway through which approximately 1/5 of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas flows. Iran closed the strait in the early weeks of the conflict, triggering massive spikes in global energy prices. 11. The complete removal of all sanctions imposed on Iran by the United States and the international community. 12. The permanent termination of the UN snapback mechanism, the legal clause that previously allowed sanctions to be automatically reimposed against Iran under the 2015 nuclear agreement. 13. U.S. technical and material support for electricity generation at Iran's Bushehr civilian nuclear plant. 14 and 15. A broader framework for long-term regional stability, including mutual security guarantees and normalized relations over time. These are sweeping demands. They effectively ask Iran to surrender most of its hard-won strategic deterrence capabilities, its nuclear program, its missile arsenal, and its network of regional proxies, in exchange for sanctions relief and normalized relations. Iran's response to the plan has been carefully calibrated and deliberately ambiguous. On the official record, Iranian leaders have denied that any negotiations with the United States are taking place. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi stated plainly on state television, "The exchange of messages through mediators does not mean negotiations with the U.S." He added that Iranian authorities received certain ideas conveyed through intermediaries and that, if necessary, a formal position would be announced by senior leadership. However, behind the scenes, the picture is more nuanced. Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian, who faces significant internal economic and political pressure due to the ongoing conflict, has signaled conditional willingness to explore an agreement, provided that Iran's core demands are met. Those demands, as outlined by Iranian officials, include: first, recognition of Iran's legitimate rights, a phrase widely understood to mean the right to peaceful nuclear technology. Second, the payment of financial reparations for war damages inflicted on Iranian soil. Third, firm international guarantees against future military aggression from the United States or Israel. Fourth, the complete lifting of all sanctions imposed on Iran. Fifth, the closure of all United States military bases throughout the Middle East. Sixth, a new legal mechanism for the Strait of Hormuz, one that formalizes what Tehran views as its de facto dominance over that critical waterway. Iran has also insisted that any ceasefire deal must include Lebanon as part of the agreement, a demand linked to the ongoing situation involving Hezbollah and Israeli military operations in the region. Iranian parliamentary leaders have issued additional warnings. Speaker Mohammad Bakr Kalibaf declared that Iran would launch military action against any neighboring country that cooperated with what he described as efforts by enemies to occupy Iranian-held islands, a direct warning to regional states hosting U.S. forces. Segment 5. The military situation on the ground. Cue military briefing graphics, video of U.S. naval operations, aerial strike footage. Even as diplomacy unfolds behind closed doors, the war continues. And the military statistics being reported by U.S. commanders are staggering in scope. Admiral Brad Cooper, the head of U.S. Central Command and the military officer overseeing operations in the Middle East, delivered a detailed assessment in a video briefing last week. According to Cooper, the United States military has now struck more than 10,000 targets inside Iran since the beginning of the operation. The toll on Iran's military capabilities has been severe. 92% of Iran's largest naval vessels have been destroyed. Iran's drone and missile launch rates have fallen by more than 90% compared to the start of the conflict. The United States and Israel have together damaged or destroyed 2/3 of Iran's missile production facilities, drone manufacturing sites, and naval shipyards. President Trump echoed these assessments during his Air Force One press conference, saying, "We knocked out their entire Air Force. We knocked out most of their missiles. We've also knocked out their Navy." Trump added a striking claim about the war's timeline, stating that the United States is weeks ahead of schedule, a phrase that suggests military planners had drawn up contingency plans for a longer and costlier conflict, and that those plans are moving faster than anticipated. Despite these figures, the war has not stopped. Both sides have continued exchanging strikes. Iran has continued launching drones and missiles at Israel and at U.S. allied nations across the region. Kuwait and Saudi Arabia have reported repelling new Iranian drone attacks. Israeli forces have conducted fresh waves of airstrikes inside Iran, including strikes on Iranian submarine and shipbuilding infrastructure in Tehran. Iran has also threatened to open a new front at the Bab al-Mandab Strait, the choke point connecting the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden, through which a major share of global maritime trade passes. An unnamed Iranian military source, cited by the semi-official Tasnim news agency, said Iran has the capability to pose a credible threat in that waterway, a warning that carries significant implications for global shipping. One of the most dramatic subplots in this conflict is the question of Iran's leadership itself. The previous supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was killed in a U.S. military strike, an event that sent shockwaves through Iran's political system and the broader Muslim world. His son, Mojtaba Khamenei, was subsequently appointed as the new supreme leader of the Islamic Republic, a highly unusual succession that many analysts say was engineered through the influence of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. But questions about Mojtaba Khamenei's condition have swirled since his appointment. He has made very few public appearances, and reports indicate he was injured in the same strike that killed his father. When asked directly about whether the new supreme leader is still alive, President Trump gave a notably hedged answer. "We think he may be," Trump said, "but he's obviously in serious trouble and seriously wounded." Trump also used the question of leadership to make a broader argument about what he characterized as effective regime change in Iran. "We've had regime change, if you look, because the one regime was decimated, destroyed. They're all dead," he said. "We are dealing with different people than anybody's dealt with before." Trump went on to describe the current Iranian leadership, whoever is effectively in charge, as much more reasonable than their predecessors. Whether that characterization reflects diplomatic reality or political optimism remains to be seen. Another key question hanging over this conflict is whether the United States will deploy ground troops to Iran. When reporters asked Trump about this possibility, he declined to rule it out, saying the U.S. is looking at lots of alternatives. Separately, the Pentagon has confirmed that thousands of troops from the 82nd Airborne Division are being pre-positioned in the Gulf region, joining 2 Marine contingents already en route aboard amphibious assault vessels. This force buildup suggests Washington is preserving the option for a ground operation, even if Trump's comments suggest it may not be necessary given the pace of air operations. On the Israeli front, senior Israeli officials have expressed skepticism that Iran will ultimately agree to the terms laid out in the 15-point plan. One senior Israeli defense official noted that Israel is also concerned that U.S. negotiators might make concessions that could undermine Israeli security interests. Israel, for its part, has made clear it wants any final agreement to preserve its right to conduct preemptive strikes against Iran if it perceives a future threat. Globally, financial markets have reacted to the diplomatic developments with cautious optimism. Equity markets gained ground, and oil prices declined as investors responded to reports that Washington had formally transmitted its peace proposal to Tehran, hoping that an end to the conflict might restore stability to global energy supplies. So here is where things stand tonight. President Trump says the United States and Iran are making progress, that Iran has already agreed to most of the points in a sweeping 15-point framework, and that a deal could come soon. He says the United States is weeks ahead of military schedule and that Iran's armed forces have been decimated. Iran's foreign minister says Tehran is reviewing the proposal through mediators, but insists that this does not constitute negotiations. Iranian officials continue to publicly reject direct talks, even as back-channel outreach continues through intermediaries in Pakistan, Egypt, and Turkey. The questions that remain are enormous. Will Iran's new and reportedly wounded leadership accept the terms? Will the United States add additional demands, as Trump suggested? Will Israel's concerns be addressed? And can any peace hold, given the deep mistrust that has defined this relationship for decades? What is clear is that the world is watching. The Strait of Hormuz, the artery of global energy, remains a flashpoint. The Bab al-Mandab Strait has now emerged as a potential new one. And tens of thousands of lives, along with the stability of the entire Middle East, hang in the balance. This is not over. But tonight, for the first time in weeks, there are at least signs that the parties are talking, directly, indirectly, and through every back channel available. We will continue to follow this story as it develops. I'm Rose Vance. Thank you for watching. Stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll see you back here with the latest developments.